Thank you, Rabbi. All yours.
Thank you very much, Nisim. Uh, Yesterday was Yom Ha'atzmaut in Israel. We celebrated it 2 days before the regular date, which is on the 5th of the month. And being a Shabbat, we preponed it. So we were celebrating it yesterday. That's why the date changed. We changed the class from yesterday to today. I hope we have a good audience today. How are we doing, Nisim?
We have 8 people, 8 participants.
8 participants. Okay. So our regular numbers have come down. I hope we'll be able to send them the video because some of them may be working and
We have 9 now.
Okay. So Parashat Tazria Metzora, one of the technical sort of parashiot which talk about the concept of Tuma and Tahara. Tuma is normally translated as uncleanness and Tahara as in cleanliness, but or purity. But it's a little beyond that regular because you can get dirty in all the mud you want or all the dirt you want and you won't become tameh. And and all the showers in the world cannot make somebody who is a tameh tahor for that matter. So we need to understand these concepts a little more in depth. And let's take it with a summary, and then we will see how we will be able to deal
And we have a
and
minion now.
understand. Oh, great! I hope people keep adding. So, yeah. Okay. Would somebody like to? Okay. Let me. Would someone want to volunteer to read this?
Yes, I
The
don't
summary?
mind.
Yeah, please go ahead, Nisim.
Okay, summary. First, Alia. The laws of purity and impurity as they pertain to childbirth are discussed. The time frame of this period of impurity differs depending whether the child is a boy, 40 days, or girl, 80 days. The Torah mentions the obligation to circumcise a male child on the 8th day from birth. At the conclusion of this period of uncleanness, the woman follows the same procedure of being a nida and immerses in a mikvah and is required to bring a certain offering in the temple. The Torah then begins discussing the laws of tsarat, a skin
Sara'at.
sara'at, a skin discoloration similar to leprosy, which renders a person ritually impure. The basic laws of tsarat involving the diagnosis of the Kohen and possible quarantine. At the conclusion of the quarantine period, the priest either declares the individual pure or impure. The Torah then discusses the laws of tsarat and the different possibilities as it relates to healthy skin and infection. Second aliyah, the laws of tsarat as it relates to burns, a bald patch, and dull white spots on the skin are enumerated. I'll continue.
Yeah.
Third aliyah, the procedure followed by an individual who is afflicted with sarat, the main requirement being that he must remain outside the city until his condition clears up. The Torah then discusses the presence of blemish on woolen, linen, or leather garment, a green or red discoloration which can affect certain types of materials. The garment is shown to a priest who quarantines it for up to 2 weeks. Fourth aliyah. At the conclusion of the quarantine period, depending on the circumstances, the garment is either declared pure or completely burned, or only the part which was discolored is torn out and burned. The purification process of the Metzora involving 2 kosher birds, a piece of cedar, some crimson wool, a hyssop branch, fresh spring water in clay bowl is detailed. The individual also shaves his entire body. After a 7-day wait, the person shaves again and brings 3 animals and an oil offering to the temple. The priest processes the offerings in the manner prescribed in this section. With this, the purification process is completed. Fifth aliyah. The korban of Metzora, who is poor, is discussed. 2 birds can be substituted for 2 of the animals. This section describes the slightly different purification process reserved for the impoverished person. Sixth aliyah. The laws dealing with blemishes that appear on a house are detailed. If stones on a home become discolored, acquiring a strong red or green pigment, a priest is summoned. If indeed the discoloration seems to be tsarat, the priest quarantines the home for up to 3 weeks. Depending on the spread of the discoloration, the home is either declared to be pure or the specific stones are removed from the house, or in the most extreme situations, the house is demolished. The Torah then describes the purification process for such a home, which is very similar to the initial stage of the purification of the human afflicted with Saharat. After concluding the subject of Saharat, the Torah discusses the ritual impurity of a man who issues a sickly seminal discharge, as well as the method by which this person attains purity when the condition passes. Seventh aliyah. This section discusses the ritual impurity contracted by a man who issues a normal seminal discharge, the ritual impurity of a menstruating woman, and a man who cohabits with her. At the end of her impurity, a menstruating woman was required to bring to the temple 2 bird offerings in order to attain purity.
Thank you very much, Nisim. Today, I would like to really learn the sections for the Refuah Shelema, for the health of some of my very close friends from school who are suffering from COVID-19 and are unfortunately hospitalized. Some of their parents and their children. I hear in India it is getting pretty rampant. And let us hope that our others do not get infected, and let us hope that our study will be able to bring Refuah Shelema to all those who are suffering. Okay, so where does this really come in? I'm just going to try and get myself unlinked from here because.
And should I spotlight you? Maybe.
Yeah, that would be a good idea if this can be unlinked. This is unlinked, right? Okay, good.
And we have 15 people now.
Good. I think so, yeah. So it would be important. It is important for us to place this piece of information where the Torah is putting it. Where are we exactly holding? That is a question we should ask, because although Torah can be understood in its different, pieces, whatever information is there, but Tuma and Tahora, Tuma as in uncleanness and Tahara as in purity, impurity and impurity, let us translate it, have a reason why they are being introduced to us just now, right? Who would be able to tell me why is it being introduced now? Or rather, it was not introduced now, it was introduced in our last Torah portion of Shemini. If you will remember, the Torah portion of Shemini was the death of Aaron's two sons, and then it went into, which was the inauguration of the Mishkan, and then it went into the discussion of kashrut, kosher animals, what we are forbidden and what we are permitted, right? Now, we didn't go into detail about the kashrut section, but that is the parasha's flow. And then from that kashrut section, it moves into the Metzora, which talks about childbirth. Then, so we have what animals you eat, then what the woman who gives birth, what is she supposed to take care of? Then it goes into leprosy. And this is not medical leprosy as so many Hakami mention, because how can a stone wall be leprous, or how can a cloth be leprous? So it is, we are not talking about a regular leprosy as medicine understands it, but it is a kind of spiritual leprosy when the people were connected with the Mishkan and the Shekhinah in their presence. This was one way that the Shekhinah spoke with them. Nissim, I don't think I have been spotlighted. Are you sure I'm spotlighted?
I can see you on my screen. 1 second. Spotlight.
No, I can. Yeah, that's. Thank you. So, so the question that I mean comes out of the whole discussion, and then it talks about seminal emissions and maybe medical problems or whatever it is to a menstruating woman, and how she cleanses herself, as we saw in our summary just now. What are the connecting points? Would somebody like to try their skills at connecting these dots? What is the Torah working towards? Where is it taking us? I'm not going to wait more than 20 seconds. We don't have time. So quickly, guys.
Some indicators, some natural indicators, something that is occurring and pointing to something that has been discussed, I think.
Okay.
Natural discharges, something coming over the walls or cloth or something that happens without.
So what has that to do with kashrut? That is my question. What has that to do with kashrut? We were talking kashrut. We're talking about kosher animals, what I have to consume. And then suddenly it goes into a discussion with a woman who gives birth, and the mitzvah of Brit Mila also.
It talks about the
Cleanliness, right? So with kashrut
only
also,
cleanliness
uncle is right. Uncle is right. With kashrut, one of the points it goes into is how you can remain
clean,
tahor, clean, by consuming foods which are tahor, because these animals that we are supposed to consume are in a category that is called tahor. Some animals, for example, the creepy animals and the carnivorous animals are themselves in a category called tame. The animals themselves are tame, so we consume them, we become tame, right? So that is the connection point from there. So it is really talking about ritual, what we would say ritual purity and impurity. Why is it relevant? Because we just inaugurated the temple. How do we access the temple? Who can access the temple? Who can enter the temple? Who cannot enter the temple? What are the rituals that a person who becomes tameh by whatever reason it could be, natural or unnatural, how is he permitted to enter the temple or its precincts when we become or how do we make ourselves pure or tahor, so that we will be able to enter the temple? So that is the thrust. So we are now in the right direction to understand why these laws are where they are. But then the next question that comes to our mind is, what are the technical problems with for example, a menstruating woman? It is a natural happening. In fact, if that didn't happen in her, the next generation would not happen, because ovulating is why she menstruates. After the ovulation period is over, there is a natural cause. So why would the Torah take a natural aspect of human life and say that that makes a person impure? Or giving birth, for example, a person, a woman who gives birth has really fulfilled the first mitzvah given in the Torah, prurvu, that you should, what is the English translation of prurvu? That you should be numerous and, well, it's not coming to me just now, but whatever it is, prurvu is that you should multiply yourselves.
Go forth and
Children.
multiply. No?
What was the word that I?
Yeah, go forth and multiply.
Okay. Okay. Right. So proliferate. That is, yes, that is the thrust of Prurvu. That's the first mitzvah. She just fulfilled the mitzvah, and you're just putting her in a category that she cannot come into the temple. What happened to her because she fulfilled the mitzvah? Why does she become tameh? Doesn't make sense, right? We may be able to understand somebody who is sick and may be contagious, right? And why that person needs to be quarantined. But why does that person need forbidden to worship God? Because that is how you worship God. You went to the temple and you gave a sacrifice. That was the only means. There was no prayer that allowed you to commune with Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So suddenly, for a person who is sick, instead of having mercy on him and rahmanut on him and sensitivity towards him, you just suddenly said, no, you cannot worship God. How come? Right? So these things are a little, I mean, at the face value, they don't make a lot of sense. And we need to dig a little deeper to understand why is it that, okay, and some people cannot see me, so I'm just going to restart myself. Can everybody see me?
Yes, Rabbi, we can.
Yes, Bacha, we can see you.
Okay. Good. So let us take it one step further and try to understand where these laws are coming from. Correct? We had discussed this last year, so I don't want to maybe spend as much time on it. Most of y'all will remember our discussion once we sort of revisit it. So, and I would like to focus on other ideas also, but let us take the beginning of Parashat Metzora or Tazria. I know I have not brought the Torah section down, so please bear with me as I read and pay attention. Parashat Tazria starts like this. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the Israelite people thus. When a woman at childbirth bears a male, she shall be unclean 7 days. She shall be unclean at the time of her menstrual infirmity. On the 8th day, the flesh of the foreskin shall be circumcised. She shall remain in a state of blood purification for 33 days. She shall not touch any consecrated thing, nor enter the sanctuary until her period of purification is complete. So, the act of giving birth to the male child causes her to be impure for 7 days. Okay, 7 days she is impure. Now, to sort of balance out that impurity, How much time does she need? She needs 33 more days to sort of balance out her impurity. It's called the period for her blood purification. So she is really impure only for 7 days. But the purification process needs 33 days more for her to be back in a state where she can claim her purity. Why? And afterwards, she has to act as if she was a nida. Nida means menstrual. So when she was in her state of menstruity, normally the halacha in the normal circumstances is that she waits for 7 days, which is in fact the end of our parasha today, and goes into the mikveh, and then she is pure, right? In this case, she goes to the mikveh after the 40th day. After she goes to the mikveh after the 7 days also, after her bleeding has stopped, she counts 7 days. She goes to the mikveh after the 7th day, and if she is healthy enough and there is no issue of blood or whatever, because after childbirth there will be some discharge till some period, right? So after that discharge is over for 7 days, she counts 7 days like a woman who is menstruating, a nida, and then she is permitted to her husband, which means that they can have relationship. But for 33 days more, after that period, she counts from the first day of the birth, she counts 40 days, right? It doesn't matter when her 7 days period was over and when she went to the mikveh. But first 7 days, she is impure from the Torah, and then 33 more days she counts from that day, and then she is permitted to go into the temple, the Mishkan. Okay? Now the question is, if she gives birth to a boy, it is 40 days. And when she gives birth to a girl child, it is 80 days. So 14 days and 80 days. The period is extended. Why is that so? If she gave birth, then why isn't it consistent? That is the question that we need to ask. If we want to penetrate into the rationale behind this, at face value, it will look like giving a birth to a girl child is more problematic, because a woman is rendered unclean for double the period of time, 80 days, right? In between that mention, I will just read ahead. If she bears a female, oh, hold on. I'm going to read back this because there is a side point that is brought in, right? She shall be unclean at the time of a menstrual infirmity. On the 8th day, the flesh of the foreskin shall be circumcised of the son who was born to her on the 8th day. He is to be circumcised. Then it goes on to talk about she shall remain in a state of blood purification for 33 days. Is the Brit Milah connected with it? Yes, it is, because she just gave birth to a child, and it is important for us to know that we have to circumcise him on the 8th day. And then it goes on to talk about her purification for 40 days, 33 more days. If she bears a female, she shall be unclean 2 weeks as during her menstruation, and she shall remain in a state of blood purification for 66 days. On the completion of her period of purification for either son or daughter, she shall bring the priest at the entrance of the tent of the meeting a lamb in its first year for a burnt offering, and a pigeon or a turtle or for a sin offering. What sin did she commit? We don't know. Then he shall offer it before the Lord and make expiation on her behalf. He shall then be clean from her flow of blood. Such are the rituals concerning her who bears a child, male or female. If, however, her means do not suffice for a sheep, she shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, one for the burnt offering, another for the sin offering. The priest shall make expiation on her behalf, and she shall be clean. This is the procedure. Any takers? What is Torah talking about? We have discussed it last year, so I assume people should remember this. Saul, Jeremiah. Come on, guys. Okay.
I have not followed your question.
My question is, 1, why does the woman become unclean? By giving birth. 2, what is the sin offering she needs to bring?
It is not a
3,
sin offering. It is not a sin offering.
you saying not a sin offering, but over here in Hebrew it says like this. Let me read it for you.
Yes.
Yeme tahara leben o lebat tavi keves ben shenato ola
Ben
ben
Sahara.
yona
Sahara
o
to be
tor.
clean.
Can you please, uncle, please
Bola, bola.
be patient. Yeah, I'm just reading this for you. O tor le khatat. What is a khatat? What is a chet? It is a sin, right? In Hebrew, a chet is a sin. So for a khatat offering means for a sin sacrifice. She brings a tor for a sin sacrifice. So the question is why? What is the sin that she did? Okay, and then the more important question: what does the Torah want to tell us? That after 40 days she becomes pure for a boy, but for 80 days she is impure, and after 80 days for a girl. Why is this discrepancy? So we have 3 questions. Okay.
Joshua,
No takers. Hello.
this is Jeremiah.
Yeah, Jerry. Go ahead, Jeremiah.
So I don't remember last time what you said, but I think that knowingly, unknowingly, in her pain of pregnancy, she might have said something that is wrong. That's why she's bringing a sin offering.
Okay.
And she's impure because with the child, there was one more life in her. And therefore, now that particular life has been separated, she is now experiencing a lower life. She is back to her one life where she was with 2 lives before that. So
Okay.
it is an experience of reduction of life
Good.
for her.
Good. So let me explain Jeremiah's position. In fact, the Chachamim go ahead and explain what was her chet, although I don't agree with them. But the chet that the Chachamim say that she sinned is that when she was having the pains of childbirth and she was in very, very excruciating pains, what does a woman do? She says, I am not going to be with my husband again. I'm not allowing him to have children. Right? I am forbidding myself to have relations because this is not bearable. And once she comes off from her very high painful state, then she normalizes, but she has spoken something that she cannot keep, and that's the chet she has done, and that's why every woman who has gone through this pain of childbirth is needs to bring a chet offering, a khatat. I think there is much deeper to it than just that. it is possible. I won't say that it's not possible, but when we dig a little deeper, which is what Jeremiah did with the second explanation, we see the connections more clearly. What is the second connection that Jeremiah said? Jeremiah, I'm going to paraphrase you in a different way. Okay. When a child is being, the fetus is being developed in a mother, right? There is a second life that Jeremiah said, it is a double life that is in her womb. So she has her soul, that is one piece of life, and she has another piece of life with a living soul separate from her but inside of her, right? So when the woman gives birth, this life is separated from her. It is as if what happens when life is separated from a body? It turns into a corpse. A corpse is avi avot hatuma. It is the primary source of tuma. A dead body. And here I won't go into the details of but how and why, but the Jewish dead body, for example, has a very high level of tuma. Okay, dead animals also have tuma. Even kosher dead animals we saw not slaughtered properly, not animals which die because of a injury or die of its own accord. These are kosher animals. But if a person touches such a corpse, like a dead cow, because he needed to bury his cow after it got old and had to die, right? So although the animal was tahor, it was a pure animal, but it renders the person impure because it touched a corpse who lost its soul, right? So when I'm even talking about a cow which is permitted to us, right? For sure, other animals like a snake, dead snake, or other creepy things which are dead, and a person for whatever reason touches them or it falls on a person, that also renders them unclean. So what is exactly the principle behind this is when life exists our physical home, the body, it renders the physical body tame. Such a level of tame, that tuma, such a level of impurity that it can cause others to become tame. So if you are in the same room with a corpse, right, then you become tame, not even because you touched it, just because you are in the same room. That is the halakha. That is how high the level of tuma is. Why? What caused the level of tuma? The exiting of the soul from the physical body makes the body tame. That is, in other words, the vacuum caused by the loss of life-giving, let's call it soul, life-giving soul. The vacuum renders the corpse unclean. It could be animal, it could be body, it could be non-Jew, it could be Jewish. In fact, there are levels of tuma that these things cause, and the highest is the Jewish body. Okay. When a woman gives birth, there is a body inside of her, and that body has its own soul. So to some extent, the period of pregnancy, she was elevated to a level where she was carrying another soul. And what happens is that vacuum that comes into her because of the fact that she has just given birth causes her body to become tame for a period of time. And this time to heal for a male is 40 and for the female is 80. From here, what do we learn? We learn that for reasons of spiritual intensity or the life intensity, yeah, the exiting of the male life from her, exiting in terms of childbirth, is more dilute than the exiting of the female child. The female child is much more spiritual in terms of its life force, in terms of its depth of its soul connection with Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So the life force that it brings in makes a bigger vacuum, and the vacuum needs to be filled in by 80 days of purification. So suddenly now, instead of thinking in terms of, oh, what happened, what is this 40 and 80-day period, what is this connection with the life force that is there in a person's body, we can understand Tara and Tuma better. Once we use these principles, then we will be able to solve the whole all the varieties of Tara and Tuma that are presented in our parashat. Again, one of the mitzvot we spoke about over here was the Brit Milah, right? For the woman, there is no Brit Milah, right? Why is there no Brit Milah? Because she is already as if she has a Brit Milah. She is on a higher level of spirituality by default. And that is why she doesn't need a Brit Milah. That is why she doesn't need to do all the mitzvot that a human male Jew has to make the mitzvot. I have to wear the tefillin. A woman doesn't need to wear a tefillin. She is already connected with that aspect that the tefillin is going to imbue that I am going to imbibe by wearing the tefillin by default, right? She or her soul or the source of her soul is already connected with that aspect. I am in fact wanting to discuss the concept of Brit Milah because it is mentioned over here. In passing, it may look like, but in a little more depth. But let me quickly move on to the other aspects because we are talking about Tuma and Tahara, and this is going to take us to a different direction. So I'm going to come back to the concept of Brit Milah in a minute or in a few minutes. Let us see this principle that we have just figured out. How does it work with the other examples in our parasha? So our parasha goes on from the woman who have given birth to somebody who's called a Metzora, which is a ritual leprosy, let us call it. Okay, what happens in that case? Why does a person who is unhealthy being treated like one? He is quarantined. He is not only quarantined, he is quarantined for a period of days. If the malady remains with him, then he is removed from the community. He is sort of removed from the town, just to a place where such people live. Why is leprosy also cause for Tuma? If you look at how a person who has leprosy or leprosy in terms of the ritual leprosy that is being discussed over here is dealt with in halakha, you will see that there are only two things. One is a dead body that is in the room that renders others who are in this closed premises without even touching unclean. So a person who was in the same room with a dead body cannot enter the Beth Hamikdash. He has to go through a purification process, or the Mishkan. Similarly, if a person was with a person who was suffering from ritual leprosy, sarat, right, with a Metzora, the word for a person who is suffering from sarat is called a Metzora. So if he is in the same room, he is rendered impure to walk into the Mishkan or the Beth Hamikdash. Why? This person was not dead. He is just suffering from a malady, some patches on his skin. Why does it render the other person impure? Because the person, according to Jewish understanding of leprosy, is that it is a living person who has death, or the experience of death happening in him. So it is that part of his skin or limb that is numb and senseless, and or it may be scaly, or it may have other expressions. That part is the death that is crept into a living human being. So leprosy has to be understood as someone who is living with death. In fact, the halakha, the way it works is it talks about different ideas, but there are the Gemara talks about 3 incidences really, and we can relate why. There is somebody who is excommunicated, so he walks out of the camp, he is not spoken to, he moves out of the camp, and how he has to be treated. Then somebody who is a leper with leprosy, sarat, the ritual leprosy, how he has to be treated. And the third person that they bring into the equation is a mourner, and how he has to be related to, right? The reason why the Gemara brings the mourner into the equation is because in principle, if we think about it, a person who is mourning death of something that he was someone who he was connected to. But a person who is suffering from sarat, he is himself the mourner for mourning the part of his system, part of his body that has sort of fallen in the category of death. So halachically, this is where the contamination of the sarat or the metzora comes in, because he is sort of death is a part of his system. That's why he renders others impure, and that's why he himself is impure. Okay, so that is the metzora. Then why is a menstruating woman also becomes a nida and cannot walk in? Because the capacity to have life, the ovulation, till the seed was in the state of ovulation, she was the substrate, the area where she could create life. But once she passes that state, and then her system is rejecting that ovulated egg, that means that now the possibility of life at that period is lost. Because the possibility of life is lost, thank you. the possibility of life is lost, she gets into a state of impurity, because impurity is caused by a vacuum of life. That is the principle we stated, right? Why is a seminal discharge a problem? A seminal discharge is the masculine counterpart of the ovulation process. The human being's capacity, of the male's capacity to have children, is because of his seminal discharge. And if the sperm is lost, at least for the period till he rejuvenates and repairs his system, and he can be in a position to have more sperm in his system, he becomes again in the same category. He gets into the same category like a person who has lost the ability for life, and a vacuum is created, and that's why he is again in the state of tuma. Okay, so all these now set the stage for us to understand where this is coming from. Let me quickly make a baraha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvaro.
Amen.
And
Any questions up to here?
Rabbi, I had one question. I mean, everything else was understood. This one part where you spoke about the sin, I mean, the women, after her delivery is considered to be a sinner, sort of. So that logic, I was also not very convinced, and I wanted to know if you have some take on it. That was one. And second is, these days, there are all these planned deliveries, and woman has anesthesia and C-section. She might not even know, and she might not be in a position to abuse and curse and whatever. So I'm just thinking, but she still, that same thing
Has to bring a
applies.
khatat. Yeah, she has to bring a khatat. Good, see?
So I'm just
So
thinking,
we
if you
have
have
to.
more better rational, logical explanation, that was my only question. If you have
Good.
something.
But I don't know if it is a rational or logical explanations, because logic can go up to a point in explaining things, and we have to sometimes go beyond logic. Like logical explanation even for this is this, I won't say this is very logical whatever I explained, but that is the Kabbalistic understanding of where this is coming from. So now what we have to understand is our position vis-a-vis the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, I have to walk into the Mishkan as a life force. The minute that my abilities are somehow dimmed to be the source of life or the channel of life, I am forbidden, or in fact, it is going to hurt me. The language is very clear in the Torah that you could get yourself killed once you walked as Tameh into the Mishkan. Okay, and so there is this affinity, or there is this need for us to be in our vitality, sort of. But let me ask you a question. If there is a 95-year, 80, 100-year-old man or a woman who is after her birthing cycles, or what is the word called? She's in her
Menopausal
menopause state, right?
state.
Is she forbidden to go into the Mishkan? Or if she goes with her family for a Pesach offering to the temple, right? Or she's forbidden to walk in? No, she is not. So it is not the absence of the ability, but it is the vacuum caused by the ability to recede, sort of. It has, so it is not that every human being, even at age 120, if a person who cannot have children walks into the temple, is no problem. A woman who is after 80 menopause walks into the temple, no problem. She has her full abilities. But the real problem is that you have to lose the ability in terms of actively having birth or a seminal discharge or death in the system, like in Metzora. Only then it causes it. So it is not only, I mean, what I'm trying to say, it's not so simple, as we are understanding it. There is much deeper levels to it that we need to unravel to see where and how this works. So I would like to use this as the introduction also to the Brit Milah that I want to discuss, and which is brought down in the parasha. The mitzvah of Brit Milah was given to Abraham Avinu at the age of 99, right? And he did it at the age of 99, and he was commanded to do it on his sons and his family, even his slaves. And it was a brit, a covenant that was set out. In fact, 13 times in the Torah, this mitzvah is repeated. Although there are only 3 times that the covenant that the Am Israel did with Israel at Sinai, and twice again, that covenant is mentioned only 3 times. Okay, the covenant of the Torah, but the covenant of the Brit Milah is mentioned 13 times in the Torah. That is how important the Torah thinks that is. Not only that, a person who observes the Torah, the whole Torah, right? 613 mitzvot. Not everybody does all the mitzvot, because some are there for the Kohanim, some are there for the women, some are there for the men, some are there for different kinds of people in different situations. But 613 mitzvot. And there is one mitzvah that stand alone, is the Brit Milah, that is equivalent to all the mitzvot. You give a child a Milah, Brit Milah, and it is as if he has fulfilled all the 613 commandments. How come? Even the more confusing question is, the child at 8 himself has no cognition of what is happening to him, although the pain will be registered and everything true, but he is not a decision maker in the mitzvah. How then we give credit to him that he has done all the mitzvot like 613? What is the weight of the Brit vis-a-vis the other mitzvot? Why is the Brit given so much importance? That only because of the Brit does a person become Jewish. Otherwise he's not even a Jew. He can keep the whole Torah without doing the Brit Milah, and it is as if he didn't do the Torah. He just did some good acts. That's all. You won't be able to get Olam Haba also. A person who has not done the Brit Milah, keeps the whole Torah, will not get Olam Haba as the Jewish Olam Haba. There may be some other ideas and we believe that for non-Jews there is some kind of a reward which is equivalent to the Olam Haba, but it is not per se the same Olam Haba as one creates for himself after doing mitzvot. So he is going to lose that according to our tradition. So why is it that the mitzvah of the Brit Milah, which is in fact sandwiched in the male and the female Tazria laws, that the woman who has given childbirth, it is placed over here, correct? What is the significance of the Brit Milah, that it becomes Why it has to be done on the 8th day without the child even. Wait for him till he becomes 13. The problem is, I don't think 80% of the kids today we will ask them to do it on 13. They will say, "What, are you crazy? Why should I do it?" The Torah understands that, I think. No? So, any takes? What could be the connection, and why is it that the Brit Milah is mentioned over here, although it looks like it is mentioned in passing? But I think it is going to give us the key into higher depths of the mitzvah. No takers?
डॅडी काहीतरी बोलतायत.
Yes, uncle, please.
See,
Bola.
Brit Milah is so important for us. It falls on Saturday, so we have to do it.
Correct.
But
Exactly.
if a person dies, no, त्याला बोलणार नाही थांबा, आपला सण असलं काय असलं तर त्याला बरियल नाही करत. पण ब्रीथ मिला इज सच दॅट वी इवन योम किपूर मध्ये आला ना तरी आपल्याला करायला पाहिजे.
बरोबर
दॅट इज सो इम्पॉर्टंट. मग आपण का नाही थांबत? बिकॉज ही हॅज टू गेट इन ज्युइश मध्ये बनवून लवकरात लवकर घ्यायचंय आपल्याला त्याला.
राईट. पण असं काय होतं की तो ज्यूइश होतो? That is my
Jewish
question.
में
Why is it? I will add to your comment. We know that, as I said, somebody who doesn't do the Brit Milah and dies, although he did the whole Torah, he cannot get Olam Haba. But say a stillbirth, a woman unfortunately had a stillbirth. The child was born dead, or the child died before the age of 8, unfortunately. Right? What is our custom? What is done halachically? He is given a Brit Milah before he is buried. Why do we give him a Brit Milah before he is buried? I mean, it is very, very weird that we would want a stillbirth, a child born 6 months, 8 months, right? Not born, aborted or whatever. We give it a Brit Milah and then bury the body. That is how important it is. We do it, no considerations for Shabbat, no Yom Kippur, no nothing. If it is the 8th day, it has to be done. Where is the importance of the Brit Milah, and why is it mentioned over here? Because I think we will be able to find the key to what these mitzvot want to underline, and hopefully we will then answer Nisim's question of why she brings the khatat, the sacrifice for sinning. So let's start with the practical aspect, right? We have a physical body. The physical body lives on a physical level, eating, drinking, sensory perceptions. There is one overlapping perception in our physical body that takes us to a spiritual realm. What is that? Come on, guys. It is sex. Right? Nobody wants to talk about it because they only think about the physical pleasure. But it is real. The problem is that they don't recognize that there is more to the physical pleasure than the spiritual pleasure. That is at the time of an orgasm, what is being experienced as a sensual feeling is really a taste of the spiritual self. Okay, that is why everybody craves it so badly, and that's why it is the problem with human beings that they just cannot get over it. They have to crave it so badly because it is an opening into your spiritual self, opening into your spirit. That is what, if we have so many rules. For example, it is important for us that uh, this aspect is channelized properly, that you have only one partner, that you develop this relationship only with one partner, that you should have days that you are abstaining from it and days that you are involved in it, right? Why? The whole I'm not going to go into the details of that, it is a whole class by itself, but the whole idea is how do we make ourselves more sensitive to the spiritual I don't know, it is vibrations you can call, but at the state of orgasm, how am I able to enter from my physicality into my spirituality? In fact, if anybody asks me, the whole of the tradition of yoga and tantra and everything that is there, which they call the mysticism of the East, is based on this. All Hatha yoga, what they want to achieve by using their bodies, all the methodology is only so that they will be able to, without a partner, without uh, getting involved into sex, go into the mode of sex. That is what it is, and through that enters mystical realities. And that's why they have their kriya yoga, that's why they have their all kinds of traditions they have, is only for this. You go into the details of it and you will see that this is the entering point into the spirit. Now you tell me, guys, if I give you the key to entering spirituality, this is a door to spirituality. You know that this is a door to spirituality, right? Then how important does it become to you? The only problem is you don't have the know-how manual how to use it to enter your spiritual realm. This is the reality of humanity on this planet. And that's why humanity is going around in circles, and all the movies that are made have a component that demands your attention to this aspect so that they will have TRP or whatever. But this is how every advertising, everything, this whole world is what we call the Yesod, according to Kabbalah. Yesod means the pillar on which everything stands. What this world stands on, one aspect, and all the spiritual influx, even according to psychology, according to Sigmund Freud, what is your main thing is your sexual, all psychologies depending on that, right? Why? Because that is where Yesod is, the foundation of this world is there. This is where everything emerges from. Not only procreation, for sure in physicality also, that the emerging is happening from there. From procreation happens from there. But even on all kinds of psychological and spiritual and every realm that you can think of, this is the core where everything focuses on. Okay. Now, let us try to understand ourselves, because in the bigger picture is there in us. And I can bring to you the bigger picture, talking about, oh, there is this, according to Kabbalah, there are these worlds and there are these Sephiroth, right? But and what and how are they trying to relate to us is how I would like to explain these ideas, because just a theoretical understanding of it is in fact, according to me, detrimental to our understanding of Torah, because you just think that you understood, but you don't understand anything. It is just an intellectual mire of things that are going to keep you confused and will in fact work against you to grow to spiritual heights. Okay, so without using the Kabbalistic jargon, I would like to bring to you some concepts of Kabbalah to understand where this mitzvah of the Brit Milah is coming from. Okay, let us see how do we make this happen in our reality. Yeah, we have our in Torah they call it the 4 worlds. According to Kabbalah, they call it the 4 worlds. They can be felt in my reality by 4 different levels. There is a level that I act. There is a level that action happens through that. Physical action. I change things, I make things, I break things. There is a level before that I can communicate. I can get others involved in the action that I want to be pursuing. So I can communicate my ideas. So there is communication, speech. Then there is a level higher than that, which we call thought, right? So you have thought, then you have communication, then you have action. Even before thought, there is something which we will call inspiration. There is a flash inside your, something that strikes you, and then you start thinking about it. What was this this idea that came to me? For example, I had this idea, oh, this thing over here I'm reading, oh, this thing, circumcision has to do something with this. And then my thinking process starts conjuring up the connections. And then now what I'm doing is I'm speaking, communicating, and then that is going to bring you to action and bring me to action, right? So we have inspiration, then we have thought itself, then we have communication, and then we have action. These are 4 levels that we see in our reality, right? Now I'll show you in our makeup, there are 4 levels. What are these 4 levels? The first level, let us say, is the physical level, that my being is, I am a physical being, blood and muscle and bone, right? But then there is a mental level. Physical level, there is a mental level. In the mental level, really there are 2 levels. One level is the level of emotion, that I can feel things. I can become sensitive to somebody else, emulate, have empathy, have concern for others, and feel their pain and feel their pleasure, and everything is in the realm of emotion. Yeah, the higher you go, you can leave emotion behind, and then you will see that there is an intellect. Then you have your rational thinking, then you have your concepts, or your imagination, or your memory, and no doubt even in emotion you use all that, but then you have your intellectual striving, right? And beyond the intellectual striving, there is something which we will call that it is astral reality, which we really don't know what it is, sitting in physicality, but there is a astral reality which we could call it as the life force itself, or the vibrations of a living body. You know, there is something more than just the physical, the mental, There is something emotional, the mental, and there has to be something which we'll call the spirit, the spiritual. So we'll call that astral or spiritual, right? So there is, again, 4 realities that are one upon the top of the other in our body. The spirit, then you have the mental, the mind, and the emotions, and then the physical body. Call them 4 bodies. You want to call them one inside the other, right? Now, all the mitzvot, 633 mitzvot, 613 mitzvot, all the mitzvot, or rather the 612 mitzvot out of the 613 mitzvot, have to do with, as we have learned, raising our physicality. So they work with our physical body, your emotional body, your mental body. So when you care for somebody else, you are involving a mitzvah where your emotions are involved. When you learn the Torah, you are involving a mitzvah where your brains are involved, your thought is involved, your intellect is involved. When you run to help somebody, you physically involved in something, right? So all the mitzvot are on these levels. The mitzvot work only when you have to learn from them the principles that they are embedded in. Okay, so when you are giving tzedakah, you have to understand that the other person comes from a certain background. He may be impoverished and he needs your help, and whatever blessings that come to you are not only yours, he should also have got the same. You know, there is this whole process that allows you to become sensitive to why you are doing this mitzvah. Once you become sensitive to that mitzvah, then that mitzvah has repaired its reality in your soul. It has sort of gained back something that has been lost in the story of creation. There is only one mitzvah that doesn't need cognition. It happens on the 8th day. No thinking, no nothing. Somebody else is doing it on the child. And the child is not only doing that mitzvah then at his day 8. He does it on his 9th day, his 10th day, his 120th year also. He lives with the mitzvah as if he is doing the mitzvah every second of his life. And that is the mitzvah of Brit Milah. The mitzvah of giving tzedakah or lighting Shabbat candles and observing Shabbat, everything was in a period, in time, in space. It happened, it started, and it finished. The mitzvah of Brit, it doesn't work like that. It goes beyond time and beyond space. It is throughout, as if you are doing the mitzvah every second of your living life and even beyond. That is how mitzvah of the Brit Milah is merited by us. Why is it that this mitzvah gets so much preference when it is not even cognitive? You don't involve your emotions. Yes, you involve your physical body, but what do you do with your physical body? Did you really achieve something? What really, if you go into the nitty-gritties of the mitzvah, what do there is a foreskin, and the foreskin needs to be cut, and it reveals the keter, it reveals the head. That's all. But it was always there. It was always there. And it was always there. What you did was you just revealed something which was always there. So in principle, it doesn't achieve anything more. It was always so. Even in the physical, you didn't really make a big change. You just revealed something what was there. See, emotionally, were you involved? Yes, you cried, you did everything. There was pain for the next 2 weeks. Everything, yes. But emotionally, were you
I mean, there is some involvement like in the other 612 mitzvot? No. On the level of intellect, do you have to think it out and you have to understand something through the mitzvah? No. The mitzvah, you just do the mitzvah and that's it. Why is it so? So for this, we will have to understand the levels that we have been trying to talk about in our physical body. In our physical body, the levels of reality are removed from one another. I can think about an idea, but not necessarily I will be able to communicate it. Once I can communicate it, I won't need not be necessary that I will be able to physically achieve the same concept, right? Because we have a broken system. My system is not aligned with each other that whatever I think I can achieve also. But there is one thing in our system that goes beyond our broken worlds. We call this broken worlds because they're not aligned, right? I'm calling it broken worlds. It is the physical world or the world of action, the world of emotion or the emotional world or the communication world, the world of intellect, or we'll call it the world of thought, and all these worlds are broken. But there is one world which goes beyond this, and we will call it the inspiration or the astral world. The world where everything initiates, the world where everything has the starting point. Now this astral world, where in the body do you really intersect with it? You guys with me? There is an astral world, the world where there is this inspiration that we are talking about Atzilut really. In Hebrew, in the Kabbalistic jargon, they call this world the world of Atzilut, the world of God, where Hashem, or the spirit of creation, of everything, before he descends into these realities, is the source. In our physical world, there is a point of intersection for this world of Atzilut. And that point of intersection is Yesod. That point of intersection is Yesod, the area where you do the circumcision. What you really achieve by doing the circumcision is you tap into this energy, or it's not energy like in physical energy. When I'm using the word energy, it's not physical. It is this capacity when a person can, in relations, reach the highest states of orgasm, right? That ability is existing only at this point. That ability, I want to touch that ability to achieve something else. Not procreation for the next generation, but procreation for myself. What do I mean? Atzilut is where the real soul exists. The soul, what we call the divine entity that is responsible for the physicality of our creation, exists in Atzilut. It doesn't need to descend down. It is there in Atzilut. It is that wish of God that I be created. And it is there. There is only one point that I can reach it and connect with it. What is this point? It is that area that has the intersection with Atzilut. So the minute I do the Brit Milah and what did I do? I didn't really do it. I just revealed the crown. I revealed the minute. See, in our physical reality, the whole spiritual reality is shadowed or mirrored. So we have a head, we have two eyes, we have a nose, we have a mouth. There is a reason why we have the way we have. We have arms and we have fingers and we have fingernails. What has the fingernail and hair to do with our reality? But it has a very deep connection with the spiritual reality. In spiritual reality, there are things that we call evil, right? They cannot directly imbibe nourishment from creativity. So they are sort of indirectly taking in nourishment, and they are not connected. What is represented by them in our reality? It is the nails. You can cut nails without any issue. You won't have any problem. You can cut hair without any issue of your beard, of your mustache, of your head. No problem. You can shave your hair. That's why you will see in all these rituals. We saw one ritual over here that he has to shave off his hair. It has the symbolism with the negativity that is there in the creation reality. That hair represents something which needs to be in this world, and in Kabbalistic language they call it a klipa. But this is a klipa that really cannot. This is a klipa is called like a shell or a rind of a fruit, right? The fruit covering, that's called a klipa. So sometimes there are two kinds of klipot according to Judaism. Are according in creation. In creation there are those klipot that can be saved, and those klipot that have to be rejected. So, for example, in the in the area of food, those animals that are not kosher, that cannot be slaughtered and eaten, I can how much soever I want that area to be penetrate into me, I cannot digest that. I cannot make it holy. It has to be left for its world. But there are kosher animals that I slaughter, and they can be eaten by me, and with the energy that comes with it, I am able to do mitzvot. In fact, some kosher animals, when the Mishkan was standing, were slaughtered and directly raised up so that they could do the avodah of sacrifice, right? So these were klipa, this area of klipa that can be imbued or sucked in back into the system. Okay. So now what we are talking about is that the world, however God created the world, is created in a area where we can rectify the world, but we need to know which parts of the world we can rectify and some parts of the world which don't need to be rectified. So my nails and my hair represent that areas that cannot be rectified. I just have to, they are not impure. They represent a reality in our world, which is the reality of the klipa that needs to be around for a reason, but that cannot be salvaged. But there is a klipa in our world, like the kosher animals, that can be salvaged, and that klipa is, for example, the klipa of the Brit Milah. That foreskin can be salvaged. That's if you cut that foreskin, that head can be revealed. Where it is revealed and how it is revealed is the energy that is represented by that area, and that revelation allows you to connect to your source. What is your source? Your source is the soul, the divine soul. That sort of, you can imagine it hovers over your head sort of. Once a child is born, the soul is hovering over his head. How are we doing for time, Nissim?
We have about 5-10 minutes to conclude.
Nissim, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
नाही मी म्यूट काढले.
Second
We have about 5 to 10 minutes, Rabbi. Can you hear me?
We have got 5 to 10 minutes. That was Nishimi saying. He is not hearing.
No, he's on mute now. Rabbi, you are on mute. 5 to 10 minutes. Rabbi, you are on mute. 1 second.
Joshua, you are on mute. Mute.
ना म्यूट हो रहे तो एक मिनट Rabbi,
Joshua, you
can
are
you hear
on
me?
mute.
We can hear you.
Are Nisim, even
Can
he
you
is
hear me?
frozen also.
Now
His picture is
we
frozen
now we
also.
can hear you. Rabbi,
Yeah.
we couldn't hear you, but now we can.
You
हा,
guys
आता
are able
ऐकू
to hear me till
Rabbi,
now,
आता ऐकू
right?
येते.
आता मला ऐकू आलं. हा. Till now
हा,
you all could hear me, no?
येस नुसतं लास्ट तू जेव्हा मला क्वेश्चन विचारलंस ना टाइम किती आहे मी बोललो 5 to 10 minutes आणि मग तेव्हा नाही ऐकू येत होता तुझा
Okay.
पण ओके
Fine.
थँक्स
I'll just sort of realign all the ideas that we have been talking about. We spoke about there are different areas in our physical reality that represent the spiritual worlds. The reason why we have a head, why we have arms, why do we have nails, everything has to do with spiritual. Why do we have only 10 arms? It has to do with some reality in the physical world which represents 10. Why do have 2 eyes represent some reality in the physical world, in the spiritual world which has 2. Okay? I'm not going to go into that, but what we need to understand that in our physical reality, there is the aspect of Yesod, that is the foundation, which is in our area where we do the Brit Milah, which is directly connected with the spiritual world, which is directly connected with, intersects the spiritual world. Why does it intersect the spiritual world? Is because the spiritual world descended into our world for a reason. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for a reason, and the reason was to bring him into, or what, when I mean to bring him into our world, it means that the physical world, when it is created, it had to get divorced from the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So as we go higher and higher in the spiritual ladder, there will be more and more light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu vis-a-vis the physical reality. Okay. So I'm not talking about, don't mistake, don't confuse with the ideas I use, because I used ideas in our world where our intellect and our emotion and our heads were there. I'm not talking about that. That is all in the physical world, but that basically mirrors the spiritual world. So in the physical world, whatever represents the emotion, whatever represents the intellect, whatever represents the astral reality, has a real spiritual counterpart. Now I'm talking about the real spiritual counterpart. In this real spiritual counterpart, the highest level where you have 100% understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the equivalent of the astral reality over there, which is called Atzilut. If you come down a little bit in the second level, where there will be 75% understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and 25% no understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or no perception of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let us say, right? Then you come one step further down, then it is, the other one is called Yetzirah, creation. Then you can come one step down, it's called Beria. In the world of Beria, you will have 50-50. And then when you come into Asiya, there will be 25-75. For the sake of understanding, I'm giving these numbers. There's no such fixed things. Okay. So in reality, there is this 75-25 understanding. But in this 75-25 understanding, what happens is the counterpart of the world of Atzilut, which is, let's call it the divine soul, is not really able to house into the human form. It is sort of hovering over your head. So when the Brit Milah, the mitzvah of the Brit Milah is done, what do? We basically use that intersection point for doing the Brit to connect with that higher divine form, which really means that I start recreating a body which is the astral body along with my physical body. That is the beginning. Why uncle said that we become Jewish. What is it that makes me Jewish? It is not that I was born out of a Jewish mother. It is not. It is important. It is not that I belong to the Jewish people. No, that is important. But what makes me Jewish is the fact that I am able to achieve Hakadosh Baruch Hu's aim. Hakadosh Baruch Hu's aim was that in this physical reality, where there is 75% physicality and 25%, I'm just using numbers again, just for explanation. 25%, divinity hidden over here and there, to make the equation opposite, to make it 75% divinity and 25. How do I do it? By using all those klipot, all those aspects where there is some way of saving them and bringing them back into spirituality. By using them, how do I use them? By being involved. The whole of our earlier classes was this whole point that we are to be involved, roll up our sleeves and involved in physicality. And through being involved in physicality, we use the mitzvot to imbue them with holiness. Correct? What is the main thing that I need to do for that? Is myself be imbued and connected with that point where that holiness all centers. The holiness centers really in Atzilut, and only by doing the mitzvah of Brit Milah, I am able to connect it with Atzilut. I am able to connect it with that aspect, which is the higher reality, which really brings down what in our world, what we will call Gan Eden's tree of life. The whole thrust in Gan Eden, what was the atmosphere of Gan Eden was the tree of life. The tree of life was lost by us, and we descended into our physicality. Our physicality doesn't allow us to connect with the tree of life, except when we reconnect it with Atzilut, and that's where the tree of life is. Once I reconnect with the tree of life, then all the mitzvot make sense. That's why the mitzvah of 612 mitzvot, the other 612, are connected with, we are going over the period of counting the Omer, and there are 39. There are 49 days that we count the Omer. But if you read into the thing, it says you count up to 50th Omer. When you read the mitzvah, you count up to 50th days. We don't count the 50th day. The 50th day is Shavuot. When we reconnect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we only count 49 days. So these 49 days are really representing our work with the 612 mitzvot. But the 613th mitzvah is like the 50th day, getting of the Torah or connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that is not in our realm, but we try it. But that is how important it is, because that is the whole, the symbol is symbolically, that is what is happening when we connect in the connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu for example, you can only go up to the 49th level, and then afterwards it has to be magic. You cannot physically, it is not in the physical realm. Similarly, you can only do 612 mitzvot, 613 mitzvah. The doing of the 613 mitzvah achieves something which is beyond our cognition. It connects you with that tree of life. Why is it that she does the Hatat sacrifice? She does the Hatat sacrifice because she remembers that, oh, life came into this world, physical life came into this world with this aspect of death in it. That death was achieved because of the first pair, Adam and Chava, brought death into the world. That is the original sin that she is giving Hatat for. The original sin is also related with the fact that earlier Adam didn't have to have children. Adam didn't have to have children. The whole process of having children is also an effect of the original eating of the fruit. So she is really connecting with Gan Eden when she gives the Hatat, and all the Hatat for whoever is giving the Hatat in the Bet HaMikdash or in the Mishkan is for this original eating of the fruit. Now, these concepts are too ethereal to make them rational. But that is how Torah works. That's why Kabbalah gives them words. But I am trying to explain this without using the Kabbalistic jargon so that you will be able to recognize the link, because the link of the Mishkan was that in the Mishkan, we sort of recreated Gan Eden. Now that we recreated Gan Eden, we also need to have the paraphernalia around to enter the Gan Eden. To enter Gan Eden, death is a problem. So we have to give a Hatat for death. Every time anything is connected with the life force and you see the life force directly leaving the body or living or residing in it in terms of leprosy, you have to be wary that now you cannot enter Gan Eden. That area is as if you are going to eat from the fruit of life. And how do we do it is with the mitzvah of Brit Milah, that we keep ourselves connected with Gan Eden, with the tree of life. And that's once we recognize we are having the tree of life, then only we have the capability to bring holiness into the mundane. If I am not plugged in, how am I going to supply the electricity? I need to be plugged in. That is what the Brit Milah does. It allows me to be plugged in. But it could be that I am plugged in, but I am not connected with the appliances and I'm wasting it. So everybody who does the Brit Milah not necessarily achieves it, but at least he is plugged in. After being plugged in, there are 612 mitzvot that you need to take care of. But if you do 612 mitzvot and you are not plugged in, then you cannot even achieve a single mitzvah. So that is how everything comes together. I hope I was able to do justice to that topic, but if you all have any questions, maybe I will be able to clarify more ideas. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi. It was very well tied up in the end. All these concepts and whatever pointers you brought out throughout the lecture, in the end, it was very beautifully tied up. So that was my small comment. But thank you and Shabbat Shalom. Any questions from any participants? Please go ahead.
एका बेन इस्रायलनी लोकसत्ताला लिहिला होता अबाउट द ब्रीथ मिला. त्या लोकसत्तानी तिकडून एका प्रोफेसरने लिहून कळवलं the breath mila is introduced for that disease have come out to this place. Doctors
to stop the diseases or to
yes, stop the disease.
Okay.
इकडच्या डॉक्टर्स बी तेच बोलतात दिस इज विथ ब्रीथ मिला इज टू स्टॉप द डिजीज.
हा तर त्यांना अर्धाच पिक्चर माहिती आहे. ठीक आहे.
सो राईट. पण मी तुम्हाला बोलते हाऊ द अदर वर्ल्ड इज थिंकिंग अबाउट द ब्रीथ.
राईट. करेक्ट.
जोशुआ सायंटिफिकली सांगतात डॉक्टर्स पण की काय त्याला बोलतात ते गोनोरिया हे ते सगळं ह्याचे डिजीज आहेत ना.
हो.
ते
ब्रीथ नाही केल्याने होत आहे.
एडिकेट
सगळे
करायला
STDs,
पण
sexually
केल्या
transmitted
पाहिजे.
diseases in health.
ऐकतोस?
हो हो
हा
आणि
मावशी ऐकू.
तर असं आहेत की ते मुलांच्या करतात.
बरोबर.
Okay, Shabbat Shalom. God bless you and give you good life and healthy life.
Hello. These non-Jews who are doing the Mila,
Yes.
how do you connect them?
Well,
Even the Hindus do, the Christians do, some of them, the Muslims do.
yes, the Muslims do because of the Torah. The whole
Yeah.
Quran was a reflection of the Torah. They got all the ideas from the original Jews. Okay, so that the Muslims do is not a surprise.
Muslims are told by
But
Abraham.
there are other communities. For example, the Egyptian community. Egyptian people did Brit Milah. Okay, they
Because
had
of Abraham. Because of
they had a
Abraham.
tradition of doing Brit Milah. There are other communities also in the world that continue to do Brit Milah, but there could be see, all religion has some kind of inspiration happening behind it, and they could come to these inspirational ideas because not necessarily they see Jews, because they have their own saints and they have their own prophets who may have penetrated this reality, but they were never given a mitzvah like Abraham Avinu with a covenant. So they don't have a covenantal connection. We are given a covenant which is repeated 13 times in the Torah to do the mitzvah because it is going to basically plug us into that source that we will start recreating a spiritual astral body of mitzvot, repairing and taking from the what do you call what I call the klipa, from the area which is lost. So we want to repair that and bring light of Hakadosh Baruch Hu into it. They won't be able to achieve that. For them, it is just like 613 mitzvot, the other 612 mitzvot. They will have to think about it as something where they will be able to curb their sexual desires. Maybe that may be one idea. Not have medical reasons maybe, but they will never, because this was a mitzvah given to Abraham Avinu. That is the reason why we are able to plug in into it. Others without the mitzvah will never be able to plug in into it. That is the difference.
Okay, thank you very much. And God bless you and give you good life. Shabbat Shalom, Meburak.
Thank you, Benjamin uncle.
Shalom.
Okay, anybody
Thank
else
you,
with
Rabbi,
questions?
for the time on Sunday morning.
Bye. Thank you.